Listen, my friends, I have an important story I wish to share with you. It teaches an important lesson about how we must treat others in life. It is the story of a very rich man and a poor beggar named Lazarus. You see, this rich man was very rich indeed. All his life, he had lots of money and enjoyed all the finest things life has to offer. He ate the most delicious food, wore fine jewelry of gold, silver, and diamonds. Even though purple dye is very expensive and normally only worn by royalty or very important people, this rich man didn't care and spent lots of money so he could wear the fanciest purple clothes. He had a giant mansion, by far the biggest in town. He used it to throw big, fancy dinners with lots of exotic food and held spectacular parties for all his friends. Never did this rich man spare a thought before he spent any money. The rich man had everything he could have ever asked for in life, and everyone was very jealous of the luxury he enjoyed. But not everyone in the city was as fortunate as he was. Just outside the magnificent mansion owned by the rich man, there lived a poor beggar named Lazarus. His life was full of pain and suffering, and he had not a single possession to his name. All he wore were torn rags, as he had no money to buy clothes. Living on the street made him sick, and his body was covered in painful sores that never seemed to heal. He lived among the wild street dogs who would come up to him and lick the sores on his body. Whenever Lazarus did find food, the street dogs would fight him for it, making him even hungrier and even weaker than he already was.
I am so hungry, and I feel so weak. I have done everything I can to try and live a good life, and yet here I am. If only someone would take pity on me and spare me just a scrap of food.
As Lazarus lived and begged at the east gate, just outside the mansion of the wealthy man, Lazarus would sit and watch all day as deliveries of fine food, jewelry, and other treasures arrived at the rich man's house.
Look at all these fine gifts that pass in and out of these rich homes each and every day. Oh, if only I could taste even a bite of the fine foods that they must be eating.
Lazarus was so hungry that he dreamed of eating just a single crumb from the rich man's food. As he would leave to go about his business in the city, the rich man would pass Lazarus at his front gate. Lazarus would see the wealth of the rich man and beg him even just for some crumbs.
Please, sir, could you spare me just a scrap of food? I'm so very hungry.
But the rich man did not care. Every day he ignored the pleas of poor Lazarus and continued to enjoy his life of luxury without a care in the world.
Even though they pass me every day, not once have the people from these fine houses even looked in my direction. My hunger and suffering means nothing to them, even though we are practically neighbors and we are both children of God.
One night, his life of poverty reached its end. Lazarus died, and his spirit left his body. On the very same night, the rich man also happened to die. Finally, Lazarus's many years of suffering had come to an end. His spirit arrived at the gates of heaven and was greeted by Abraham himself to live in eternal bliss.
Where am I? Who are you?
Welcome, my son, as you have arrived at the gates of heaven. I am Abraham. I am one of your ancestors, and the first of God's chosen people.
But as Lazarus was welcomed by Abraham at the gates of heaven, the rich man found himself in the pits of hell, surrounded by fire and suffering. The rich man watched as Lazarus entered paradise and called out to his ancestor Abraham for help from the flames.
Please, Father Abraham, have mercy on me. Allow Lazarus to dip his finger in water and come down here and cool my tongue. These flames are so hot. I am here in agony and wish to cool down.
But Abraham could not help the rich man.
My son, do you not remember when you had all of the finest things in life, and poor Lazarus here had nothing at all to his name? He suffered each and every day, while you lived in total luxury. He lived just outside of your doorstep, and you had plenty to spare. Yet did you ever stop to help poor Lazarus through his suffering when you could? No, you didn't, and so now you can never cross the great gulf between us. The gap between heaven and hell is too great, and you must live a good life to enjoy the kingdom of heaven once you reach the afterlife.
The rich man realized how he had misused his life of luxury and began to fear for his family.
Then please, Father Abraham, send Lazarus to the house of my father. If Lazarus speaks to them, maybe he can convince them to change their ways and live more virtuous lives so they may live forever in the kingdom of heaven.
But again, Abraham could not grant the rich man what he asked for.
Alas, my son, your father and brothers already have the word of Moses and all of the other prophets before them to offer them this very message, and yet they have not listened.
But if they see Lazarus rise from the dead to give them this message, then they will be sure to listen and change their ways.
But Abraham explained to the rich man,
My son, if they do not listen to Moses, if they do not listen to the prophets, then one man rising from the dead will surely not make them listen.
And so Abraham left the rich man to face his fate and joined Lazarus again in the kingdom of heaven. And so, that is the story of Lazarus and the rich man. In the afterlife, The rich man found himself with nothing but suffering, while Lazarus enjoys an eternity of comfort and satisfaction. Let's discuss what we can learn from what happened to them.
Even though the rich man had every privilege in life, he shared no respect for God or care for his fellow man Lazarus.
Yes, once we die, we can no longer rely on the material goods of life to bring us comfort and happiness. Only by living a good life and caring for our fellow man can we make sure that we live forever in peace in the kingdom of heaven.